All right, welcome back to episode 2 of our little revision series. We're going to focus on the next bullet point on the IB guide now, which is methods used to establish authoritarian states, persuasion and coercion, the role of leaders, ideology, the use of force, and propaganda. So let's just get right into it. So use of force. This is a big one, in my opinion, when it comes to Hitler. Definitely more so in maintenance of power, but he does use it in kind of how he emerges as well, right? So we're going to go all the way back to the Freikorps and Ernest Röhm and how the Freikorps is kind of converted into the military of the Nazi Party and how Röhm becomes the head of the SA. Next, we're going to talk about the Munich Putsch and the Beer Hall Putsch, and this is a big one, right? This has a line-for-line comparison with Fidel Castro. Both of them have those failed coups against their governments, right? So the Munich Putsch, like I said, is a failed use of force by the SA and Hitler in Munich, and it's going to land him in prison, right? Kind of in that gray period where we're emerging to power but consolidating power at the exact same time. We've got the Knight of Long Knives. This is where he's going to take out his political rivals, his political opposition, as well as, right, it's also known as the Rome Purge. He's going to take out Rome, and the SA is not needed anymore. He's fearful of the SA and the rivalry that existed between him and Rome, so he takes him out, and that's going to lead to not the creation of the SS. I shouldn't have wrote creation there, but now the SS is going to supplant the SA and going to be the new kind of police force of Germany, and this is going to lead to the rule of Heinrich Himmler. Role of leaders themselves, right? This is a big one, right? Hitler had a very profound role in his own emergence to powers, right? This is going to go hand in hand with persuasion. A lot of this is kind of very similar, so it's hard to draw an exact line here. At the start, we've got the 5 scapegoats, and this is kind of Hitler and what he's going to start getting that momentum going forward. We've got the Jews, the communists, the November criminals, Versailles, and the Weimar government. After that, Hitler's going to create the 25-point program of the NSDAP after he kind of solidifies it as his party. Some examples of things that show up in the 25-point program are unify all Germans, removal of Versailles, land for all Germans, only German citizens, only German vote, no non-German immigration, which is backing up this idea of just like generalized xenophobia. Those are going to later kind of transform into more profound policies like abolish the Treaty of Versailles. I'm just going to go right through that. Abolish the Treaty of Versailles, Lebensraum, Greater Germany, and the idea of the Volk, that people's community, right? Hitler is going to be able to deal with this threat from the Strasser brothers. That's not something we talked about a lot in class because I don't really deem it that important, but I threw it on here. So there are going to be some members of the Nazi Party that become a little bit more left-leaning than where fascism was taking them, and he's going to kind of oust that potential threat. Also, a big part of this is Hitler surrounding himself with kind of very trusted party members, and he's going to delegate them very specific tasks, and that's going to be guys like Goering, Goebbels, and Himmler. Okay. Moving on, role of ideology. This is a really, really, really big one, right? Really big one. Mein Kampf, right? This is where he's going to write down a lot of this stuff for the first time, and he becomes a little bit more planned in his approach. We've got the ideas of the Aryan master race and the ideas of xenophobia, being fearful, scared, or not liking anything different than that one master race. We've got the Führer principle, which is that idea that all Germans, that Aryan race, should be led by one leader, and that leader should be him, right? Then we've got German expansionism, right? This is Lebensraum and Greater Germany coming into kind of one vernacular there. We've got anti-Marxism, so anti-communism, anti-Jewishness. We've got autarky, which means I'm not going to be dependent. I'm not going to be internationalist. I'm going to be self-sufficient on my own. Into persuasion, this is probably the biggest one, right? This is probably the one that is going to make its way into an essay about Hitler as he's emerging. And the big one here is going to be it's going to be that guy right there, right? It's going to be, that's an awful arrow, by the way. It's his oratory skills, right? Very gifted public speaker. In the beginning, he spoke to not a lot of people, but people latched on to those ideas that he was saying, and he was saying things that German people wanted to hear, right? That's why we can make the claim that the Nazis were popular before the Depression, but the Depression gave them their political power. He was popular because he was a good speaker, right? So some of the things, right, the propaganda, the early five scapegoats can come into this. Early German propaganda posters, the idea of abolishing Versailles, his early speeches of Versailles is weakening Germany, and Jewish people are like a disease and get them out. Those all fit into this kind of bucket as well. This nationalist agenda, that post 25-point program, after Mein Kampf, after Start Things get solidified, that idea of Lebensraum and Greater Germany are all going to come into this idea of persuasion, right? Then as the Depression happens and as the economy is going to collapse, this idea of employment and work for Germans, these are all more persuasive ideas, persuasive techniques that Hitler takes to garner more support. Posters, rallies held by the SA, all of that stuff applies to this bullet point right here. All right, I can clear. Back to my thing. A little bit of historiography. Can I move this? Yeah, look at that. All right. So a little bit of historiography about Hitler and kind of his emergence to power. If you're a Sonderwig historian, you're going to say that this was like a special path, that Germany has gone through a bunch of very particular circumstances that lead to the rise of the Nazis to be, you know, almost like destiny, right? That so many events happened to Germany prior to Adolf Hitler becoming chancellor and later on supreme leader of Germany, that you can't put this in linear progression. This is so many things contributed to it, right? If you're an intentionalist, you're going to say that Hitler himself, right? This is almost like great man history, that Hitler's ability, his ideology, his public speaking is what drove the Nazi party forward. If you're a functionalist, you're going to take a little bit step back from all that, and you're going to say that that it was the administration as a whole, right? It's the whole idea of Nazism that anointed Hitler into this position, and this idea of Hitler being like holier than thou is not really accurate, right? So those are three schools of history that you could incorporate into this paper. Hope that helps. I'll see you back for episode 3, where we take on a different bullet point.